Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Daled, and Mirtz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Reish Yud Zayin Amud Beis, continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos, the halachas of HaTorah. We pick up today on the very bottom of Reish Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, the last few words of the Mechaber on the page. Va'afilu bebalei chayim. We're in Siman Shin Samach Beis Sif Hey. Our learning today should be a schos. V'achenu kabeis Yisrael hanasuna batzara b'ashivya ha'imdim bein bayom u'bein bayabasha hamakim yirachim aleihem v'yetziim mitzara l'rvacha me'afelu la'ira mishibur l'geula hashta b'agalo v'zman kariv v'namar amen. Our learning should be a schos refuah shalema for Meiri v'Rabbi Reb Shalom Ruvain ben Shima, for Achi Agadol Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, Yitzchak ben Tzion ben Dusha Rivka b'Ashir Aleich Havadasa bas Rezel Serel, and for Yehoshua Levi ben Ahuva Malkachana. They should all have a refuah shalema b'sach shar Chayei Yisrael. Okay, so here in Shin Samach Beis Sif Hey, the Sif began with the words of the Mechaber, Ba'koil oisim mechitza, that you could make mechitzais out of anything. And the Mechaber told us you can make mechitzais out of kalim, so you can make mechitzais out of pots and pans. You could make mechitzais out of ukafais, out of saddles. The Mishnah Berurah pointed out that the chiddush over here is these are all items that we know you're not going to be mevatel to be mechitzais completely. You're not leaving them there. You're constructing a basic mechitza for the purposes of Shabbos, and then you're going to take it down. Still in all, that is a valid mechitza. The Mechaber also reiterated something that we learned earlier, that you could make a mechitza gerua. You could make a mechitza of shesi b'li erev, erev b'li shesi, and of course, a mechitza gerua is going to have the restriction that it only is effective up to a base asayim. It's only effective up to 5,000 square amas, and then it is no longer effective. Now, says the Mechaber, the very last words of Reish Yud Zayin Amud Aleph, Va'afilu bebalei chayim. You could even make mechitzais out of live creatures, for instance, animals. And turning the page to Reish Yud Zayin Amud Beis, Ubelvad sheyihu kifusim. However, the animals have to be tied so that they're immobile. Says the Mishnah Berurah on Reish Yud Zayin Amud Beis, Mishnah Berurah is cut in Lamed Vav, Ubelvad sheyihu kifusim. The animals must be tied. Hainu shu kaifta miba'od yom. You must tie them before Shabbos begins, on Erev Shabbos, umanicha, and then set them in place where you want the mechitza to be. Va'az mutal taltal al yidei zeh b'Shabbos. So you take an animal, you tie it so that it cannot move. It doesn't mean that you're tying it down to the ground. So this doesn't mean that you're, let's say, going to drive stakes into the ground and then tie the animal in place. It means that you're binding the animal's legs so that the animal cannot move. If you do this, miba'od yom, umanicha, and you set it in place, oz mutal taltal yidei zeh b'Shabbos, then this mechitza that you're going to create from these immobilized animals will be an effective mechitza, and it will allow you to be betaltal yosim midalad amas inside the enclosed area. So either you're taking animals, you're immobilizing them by tying them, and you're setting them up to create a mechitza. If you have large animals, a large animal could be more than 10 tefachim tall. Now we're going to see that the animal has to be crouched down to the ground. But still in all, you have very large animals, large cows, large bulls. Even if they're crouched down, they could be 10 tefachim tall. 10 tefachim, 37 inches, they could be 10 tefachim tall. So imagine you take a bunch of cows and you enclose an area on 4 sides. Or maybe you have an area that is already mukaf mechitzais on 3 sides, and now you need to close off the 4th side. So you take a few cows, you tie them, and you put them in position. Though you have to do this on Erev Shabbos, there's more than one reason why you have to do it on Erev Shabbos. First of all, there's going to be a problem of kosher, right? Normally, the way you're going to do this, you're going to use knots of a permanent nature, so you would run up against the Av Malach of kosher, but then there's also the problem of constructing the mechitza. You're not allowed to construct the mechitza on Shabbos. So you have to do this on Erev Shabbos. Once you do it on Erev Shabbos, it's an effective mechitza to enclose the area, make it a Rishos HaYachid, and be matir tiltal yoser midalid Amli, says the Mishnah Berurah weiter in Oiskat Lamed Vav, V'atam debe'inon kefisa. Why do you need to tie the animals? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Echad, Shal Yivrachu. First, he quotes the Magen Avram, and he says, well, if you don't tie the animal up, you don't know that the animal's not going to walk away. So you go ahead and you erect a mechitza, and you think everything is fine and dandy, and you could go ahead and you could be metaltal yoysim midal amas. But the animal walked away, so now you don't have a mechitza. Depending on how far away your mechitza of cows was, you might not even be aware that the cow walked away. So you can't do that. You have to tie it up so it's immobilized. V'gam. And then there's another reason why you have to tie it. The ilav hachi, if you don't tie the animal, yehefsik bein chalal shebein raglei habehema lehaaretz. The Mishnah Berurah is bringing this down also from a Magen Avram, right? He's bringing it down from a Magen Avram, that when an animal stands up, very often the gap between the ground and the underside of the animal is going to be more than shir lavud. It's going to be more than gimel tvachim, and it's gediyim baikim boy. It's a space that something, a small little animal, could walk under the cow and invalidate the mechitzos. So you must tie the animals, and the Mishnah Berurah says, kishehi kefusa, when the animal is tied and it's immobilized, shecheves begufa ala karka, it crouches down, and now it's no longer standing, now its knees are bent, it's crouched down, and you've obviated that gap. And obviously we must be speaking of large animals, so that you have a height, you have a mechitza that's 10 tfachim tall, because the animal is 10 tfachim tall even when it is crouched down. Now we come to a topic that's interesting, and it's going to take us really through the rest of today's page. Says the Mechaber in the middle of the top line, Va'afilu ba'anoshim. You can even make a mechitza out of people. Sha'imdim zeh eitzel zeh, where people are standing next to each other, bepachus mishloisha, and they're standing within the sheer lavud of each other. So you've got people standing, and there's less than 3 tfachim between them. A standing person, generally speaking, is more than 10 tfachim tall, right? So you've got people standing, they're within the sheer lavud of each other, they form a mechitza. And says the Mechaber, Va'afilu kishem mahalchim chashuvim mechitza. Even if they're walking, they still form a mechitza. So imagine for a moment that you have, let's say even a ring of people, right? They're getting together to do a Rikida. And you have a ring of people, and they're standing within sheer lavud of each other. They're standing within gimel tvachim of each other. But they're moving. They're walking. Well, the inside of the enclosure of this ring that's formed by the people is going to be Rosh Hashanah. And you could be metaltal yosim midal amas inside that enclosure formed by the people. And even though they're walking, that's not mevatel the mechitzas. The mechitzas are remaining in place. They're a ring of people, and they're moving together. So they're constantly enclosing the area that's inside them. So if you're standing in the middle of that ring, right, you could be metaltal yosim midal amas. You could keep on moving with them, because you are inside a Rosh Hashanah. Va'afilu kishem machalchem chashuvim mechitza ubeinehem Rosh Hashanah. And inside this enclosure is considered a Rosh Hashanah. Now, we'll pause over here for a second and take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, but bear in mind that the Mechaber is going to bring up a number of caveats, a number of qualifications to this halacha in the coming lines, but let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Lamed Zayin, B'pachas Bishloisha, the people have to be standing within the sheer lavud of each other, and we have a very terse Mishnah Berurah here. The Mishnah Berurah says, Ayin B'biur halacha. Take a look at the biur halacha. First, let's do Ois Katan Lamed Ches. Chashuva mechitza b'neihem Rosh Hashanah. The people that are standing together, they form an effective mechitza, and therefore the area that they are enclosing is now a Rosh Hashanah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, K'gayin shayu mukafim me'arba'a ruchais. We're talking about a case where the people are surrounding you on 4 sides. Or it could be, like I mentioned earlier by the animals, it could be that you have an area that's mukaf gimel mechitzais, and you have a line of people that are standing and schmoozing with each other, and they are forming the 4th wall of the enclosure. The point of the Mishnah Berurah is that when the Mechaber says that the inside of these mechitzais are a Rosh Hashanah, remember that means that you need an area that's mukaf dalid mechitzos. You need 4 mechitzos in order for a place to be considered rishos hayachid, even midrabanan. Says the Mishnah Berurah, umechitza gemurahi. Now, you should realize that this mechitza that's formed by people, don't think that it's a mechitza gerua. This is not like shesi b'lo erev or erev b'lo shesi. The mechitza formed by the people is considered a mechitza gemura. Umayeles afilu b'rishos harabim. It works even out in the rishos harabim. V'ayla kamon siv zayin b'haga. We'll see more about this later on in siv zayin, and specifically what the Mishnah Berurah is alluding to is the Ramah, which is going to say that we should not rely on a mechitza made of people. We will see it later in the Haggah. V'uadin the mechitza kazu have a hefsek l'Inyan l'daber divrei Torah neged mokaim sheina noki. The Mishnah Berurah mentions parenthetically another halacha that this is negeya to, and that is sometimes you have a problem that you're in a place where there's a mokaim sheina noki. There's an unclean area. Maybe there's tsaya, there's excrement in an area, and you want to be able to say yashir. You want to be able to learn Torah. You need a mechitza between you and the makom that's not noki. You should know if you have a row of people, that is an effective mechitza, and it would be a mechitza in the context of that halacha as well. Now, I want to take a look at the Bir Halacha Dibra Maschil Va'afilu ba'anoshim b'pachas mishloisha. I'm not going to go through the whole Bir Halacha, but I think it's kedai just to see the beginning of it. Says the Chavetz Chaim Hiksha Bach, the Bach asks on this halacha, we're saying over here that the people have to be standing within the sheer limud of each other. Now, we've had this halacha many times, right? Let's say you make a mechitza out of vertical posts. You make a mechitza out of vertical posts. So let's say you have a post that's 1 tefach thick. And then you have the next post, which is also 1 tefach thick. The 2 posts have to be slightly less than 3 tefachim apart so that they are within sheer limud. Once they're within sheer limud, we say that the gap between them is considered closed. So now you could enclose an entire area using your 1 tefach stakes, and you stick them all into the ground within sheer limud of each other, and you have a mechitza. So too over here, the Mechaber said that the people, you're forming the mechitza out of people, they have to be within the sheer limud of each other. But the Bach asks a bomb kasha. Frek the Bach, Hiksha Bach, Hastam Adam Roch by Amma. Chazal always consider the average width of a person to be approximately an amma. Okay, Im Kain, says the Bach, Afilu yesh beineim harbe yoisem mishloisha tvachim. An amma is an amma is 6 tvachim. Right? An amma is 6 tvachim. So if a person is 6 tvachim, Im Kain, Afilu yesh beineim harbe yoisem mishloisha tvachim. Even if you have a lot more than shloisha tvachim, gam ken yeshari mishum da'aymin merubal aparatz. Why do you need that the people should be standing within the sheer limud? We always want sheer limud, let's say by the vertical stakes, because we need to close the gap. But in the standard case of using vertical posts, the vertical posts are narrow. Because the vertical posts are narrow, when you make a mechitza out of vertical posts, they need to be within the sheer limud of each other, because if they're not, it's going to be paratz meruba ala oimid. You make a wall. You're using vertical posts. Each post is 1 tefach thick. You put up a post. Then let's say you skip 4 tefachim. If you skip 4 tefachim, you have a post of a tefach, a gap of 4 tefachim, a post of a tefach, a gap of 4 tefachim, a post of 1 tefach. This mechitza is going to be paratz meruba ala oimid. It's going to consist of more open space, parutz, than oimid, than closed space. Well, in that case, you need all the posts to be within the sheer limud, because then we look at the open spaces as being negated. We look at them as being closed. So now, even though you have paratz meruba al ha'imid, you don't, because limud says that the areas are closed. But if you have people and they're standing next to each other, a person is an amma. So now, even if you have 4 tefachim between the person and the next person, you're still going to have aymin meruba ala parutz. You're going to have the closed areas are going to be greater than the gaps. And the halacha by a mechitza where it's aymin meruba ala parutz is that you don't need sheer limud. So that is the kasha of the Bach, and you could go on in this Biur Halacha if it interests you, and you could see the different terutzim that the Chavetz Chaim brings down over here. In the end, he kind of blibes with a tzarich, and he says he really doesn't have a good answer to this question. Okay, now let's go weiter in the Mechaber, and let's see some of the qualifications, very interesting qualifications that are going to come up over here. So we said that you could make a mechitza out of people. The people have to be standing within sheer limud of each other, and if they are, they form a valid mechitza, and the mechitza remains valid even if they're moving. So the enclosure that is formed by these people has the status of a Rishus HaYachid, and you're allowed to be Metaltal Yosim Medalad Amas inside that enclosure. Now let's go to the second line down, a little bit past the middle of the line, right by the Ois Katan Lamed test for the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mechaber. When does this work? V'hu shelo yedu sheha'amdu l'shem mechitza. This only works if the people that are forming the mechitza have no idea that they are standing there for the purpose of making a mechitza. What happened over here is, you wanted to be metaltal yosim midal ramas. You happen to be out in the Rishus Harabim, so you can't. But then you look around you and you realize, hey, wait a second, I am surrounded by a ring of people, and they're all standing within sheer limud of each other. Oh, beautiful! I have a mechitza I can carry. But what you cannot do is arrange a bunch of people and tell them, listen, I need all you guys to stand next to each other within the sheer limud of each other so that I can have a mechitza and I can carry. And this really all flows from a Gemara in Eruvin, from a Maisa that happened with Rava. The Gemara brings down a Maisa that happened with Rava, where Rava realized that he had some valuable leather flasks that were out in the Rishus Harabim. And he really didn't want to leave them out in the Rishus Harabim over Shabbos. He wanted to bring them back into his Rishus HaYachid. But can't. How are you going to do that, right? But then he went out and he gave the shear. And, after the shear, there's a lot of people standing around. And when you're Rava and you just finished saying the shear, and there are a lot of people standing around, they tend to congregate around you. So Rava looked around, and Rava realized, hey, wait a second. I am mukaf mechitzais. Of what? Of people. Now, the people had no idea that they were standing there to form mechitzais. It just so happened that they're standing close to each other, and they're forming mechitzais. So Rava's Gabbai picked up the flasks and walked together with all of these people standing around Rava, and was able to bring the flasks to the Rishus HaYachid. That's the Maisa in the Gemara. But one thing you see from there, and the Gemara points this out, is that the people did not know that they were forming mechitzas. And that's why the Mechaber says, this only works, v'hu shelo yedu sheha'amdu l'shem mechitza. This only works if they don't know that they're standing there in order to form mechitzas. Now, why does that matter? So, obviously, that's a very strong question that we need to answer. Put it aside for the moment. Let's see the Mechaber weiter. Va'afilu echad mehem yedeya. Even if only one of them knows that he's standing there for the purpose of forming a mechitza, aser, it's aser. Va'afilu im lo yodiyam she'osa mechitza ata. And even if you're not telling them now, please, everybody, stand around to form a mechitza. Still, im karoiv hadavar sheyedu, if there's a reasonable expectation here that the people are going to realize that they're standing over there in order to form a mechitza, kigoin, for example, sha'asa mehem mechitza pamachas. Maybe you already pulled this shtick once. In other words, one time it happened that, and this is the Maisa of the Gemara, one time it happened that Rava and the Gabbai, they realized that they're surrounded by mechitzas. So the Gabbai took the flasks into the Rishus HaYachid. So this already happened once. Now, a couple of weeks later, again, Rav is saying the shear, the people are standing around. Again, there are flasks in the Rishus Harabim. So the Gabbai wants to use the same shtick a second time. Now you can't do it. You can't use these people to do it again. Why? Because they're going to chap. Because what happened the first time? Probably the first time, somebody looked at the Gabbai like he's a kook and said, hello, Haitzah, you're being metaltal yosim midal ramas in Rishus Harabim, what's the matter with you? And then the answer came out. Maybe they didn't chop until Shabbos afternoon when they were sitting in the Bismedrash and they were hacking with each other. And somebody said, oh, I know Pshat. We were the Mechitza. We were all standing around Rava. We were the Mechitza. Now, 4 weeks later, they want to do this shtick again. Somebody's going to say, oh, Kikun, take a look at the Gabbai. He's going to pick up the flask. This is just like last time when we were the Mechitza. Now they know that they're being a Mechitza. If the people know that they're being a Mechitza, you're not allowed to do this. You're only allowed to do this if they don't know that they're being a Mechitza. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hu shelo yedu. This only works if the people don't know that they're forming a Mechitza. After Mechitza kazu ein ba mishum binyan b'Shabbos. Now, the Mishnah Berurah analyzes this. Why is it a problem if they know that they're being a Mechitza? This is not an Isser of Bainer, Rabbi Say, because this is definitely Shaloi Kedarkai. You don't build Mechitzas out of people. So it's definitely not an Isser of Bainer. That it's not. It's not an Isser of Bainer. It's still Asr when the people know that they are forming Mechitzas. And the reason the Mishnah Berurah brings down is, the Mishnah Berurah says, Kidei shelo yavayu lezalzel be'isser Shabbos. What we are afraid of is, if people realize that they are standing where they are in order to form a Mechitza, then they feel like they're building a Mechitza on Shabbos. Why are we all standing like this? We're all standing like this to make a Mechitza. Okay, so that means we're making a Mechitza. Okay, yeah, but there's no Isser of Baina on Shabbos. Yeah, but I feel like I'm building a Mechitza. That's a problem. We're afraid that is going to bring about a kalos, a weakness in Zihirus of Hilchah Shabbos. There's a shtick. There's a loophole. Guess what? There is a way to make a Mechitza on Shabbos. And if you do this, even b'di'evet, if you went and you made a Mechitza out of people and they know that they're making a Mechitza, b'di'evet aser. You're not allowed to gain the benefit of that Mechitza. It will not allow you to be metaltal dalanamis in Rishos Harabim, Yosef and dalanamis. The dinoi ki Mechitza anasis b'mezid b'sif gimel. This would be like what we learned yesterday, that if you make a Mechitza b'mezid on Shabbos, yes, it's a Mechitza l'chumra, but it's not a Mechitza l'kula, because you're not allowed to reap the benefits of that Mechitza. Now, I think it's kedai to see over here, long-time listeners of mine know how much I love the Aruch HaShulchan. It's interesting that over the last several months, I don't think I've quoted at least not inside the Aruch HaShulchan that much, but now I think it's very kedai to read to you on Aruch HaShulchan over here. For those who would like to see it inside, it's Shin Samech Beis, and it is Sif Yud Ches in the Seifim of the Aruch HaShulchan. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, Gam mibnei Adam mutar lasos mechitza. You're allowed to form mechitzas using people. Ela sheyesh bazeh t'nai. But there's a t'nai, there's a condition. Shohanoshim shehem b'shvil ha-mechitza, the people who are forming the mechitza, lo yedu she'osim imam ha-mechitza. They cannot know that you are using them to form a mechitza. Va'afilu echad mehem yedeya, even if only one of them knows that he's standing there to form a mechitza, aser. It's aser. V'kach amru chazal be'erevin, and this is based on the Gemara in Erevin, Mem Daled and Beis, to be'inon shaloi ladas, that this only works if they don't know, ayin sham. V'loi nisbar yafa hatam. But the Gemara does not really explain the reason for this. Says the Aruch HaShulchan, there are those Rishonim that say, Mishum de'im yoidim, because if they know, havalei mechitza anasa b'Shabbos. If they know, so that means that they're making a mechitza on Shabbos. U'kishaloyadu, if they don't know, heavy kishoygig. Then, yeah, they made a mechitza on Shabbos, but it's like shoygig. What's Aruch HaShulchan saying? Aruch HaShulchan is saying there are those who look at this, and they apply the halacha that we learned yesterday. And they say like this. If the people that are standing and forming the mechitza know that they're forming a mechitza, das haste making a mechitza on Shabbos b'mezid, in which case you can't reap the benefit. If they don't know that they're forming a mechitza, then it's like a mechitza on Nasas b'Shabbos b'shegig, and then you are allowed to reap the benefits of the mechitza. But says the Aruch HaShulchan, Veda moving, this doesn't make sense. Why are we looking at it from the perspective of the people who are actually forming the mechitza? Why not look at it from the perspective of the person who wants to carry, who kind of arranged them to be a mechitza. He's doing it b'mezid. He wants a mechitza. So he's like, you mind moving over a little bit? Hey, you know what? Now, we're all walking together. How many of you 6 guys move over here and you 3 guys move over there? They don't know why this guy is bossing them around, right? So they don't know that they're forming a mechitza. But the guy who's giving them instructions of where to stand, he knows that he's making a mechitza, and he is doing it b'mezid. So from his perspective, we should treat it like a mechitza nasa b'Shabbos b'mezid, and it should be also to reap the benefits. Ela vaday tzarich loymar. Rather, the Aruch HaShulchan says you have to say de'ein behem isser asiyas mechitza shaharei lo nasa klum. Obviously, there's no isser involved here of erecting a mechitza. This is not called a mechitza nasis b'Shabbos that we should apply the rules of shogeg and mezid, says Aruch HaShulchan. V'im kein ma'ich baslonim gam hem yoydu mizeh. So what do we care if the people who are standing there know that they're making a mechitza? There are those that say shatam, that the reason is kadei shelo avoyu lahakil b'sirei Shabbos. Then there's what the Mishnah Berurah said. No, we don't want people to stand and make a mechitza on Shabbos knowing that they're making a mechitza, because then they feel like they're building a mechitza on Shabbos. They're going to be also zilzule b'yisirei Shabbos. Okay, and Aruch HaShulchan says sham b'shem harashba. The gamzei ain't moving. Aruch HaShulchan doesn't like this either. Again, his same problem. If you're telling me that the problem is that you're going to come to be mizalzel in Yisurei Shabbos, then again, look at it from the perspective of the fellow who wants to be metaltal. Very nice. They don't know that they're making a mechitza. But the fellow who wants to be metaltal, he's using them as a mechitza. So that means he's erecting a mechitza on Shabbos, and you should be concerned that he'll come to be mizalzel in Yisurei Shabbos. So says the Aruch HaShulchan, and this is the main reason why I quoted this Aruch HaShulchan. Venerally, the Baal Aruch HaShulchan says, it seems to me, the kavanas ha-paiskim b'taimam kenu. The kavanah of the paiskim in this iser that the people can't know is as follows: the kishabali ha-mechitza yadu mizeh. When the people who are forming the mechitza know that they're making a mechitza, bevada yamdu mamish b'shaveh zeh eitzel zeh v'yizharu shaloi lenadneid es atzban v'hav yedimyan l'mechitza v'aser. If the people who are forming the mechitza know that they're forming a mechitza, they're going to change the way they're standing. Kolzman, it's casual, like the Gemara in Eruvin with Rava, when Rava was surrounded by people who are escorting him back from the drasha. So then it's casual. Everybody's standing and walking around the way they always do. Then we don't have a worry over here that there's any kind of comparison to building a mechitza on Shabbos. Not from the perspective of the people who are forming the mechitza, and not from the perspective of Rava's Gabbai. This all is mechitza hanase me'elov. This is all something that happened. It's happenstance. It happened on its own. And the Gabbai looks around and says, whoa, would you take a look at that? I happen to be mukaf mechitzas. That's okay. But once the people who are standing in position to be a mechitza know that they're standing in position to be a mechitza, suddenly they're going to stand up straight, they're going to look to the guy, look to the right and left, make sure that they're within the sheer love of each other. This guy's going to move over a little, that guy's going to move over a little. It's going to look like Barachasana when the family is taking pictures, you know? You have the candid shots, which are always the best shots, and then you have the poses, you know? So that's what's going to happen here. What's going to happen is now suddenly they're cognizant that they're making a mechitza. Now they're going to pay attention to how they stand. Now it's going to be bekivun. Now it's going to be with intent. Once it's with intent, then from the perspective of the people that are standing to form the mechitza, they're making a mechitza. And that is a problem. But when they don't know, they're going to do what they do. Then there's no hecker here that anybody is making a mechitza. And since there's no hecker that anybody's making a mechitza, that is when it is mutter. Okay, weiter. So we did ois cotton lamites. Now we have to go to ois cotton mem. So the Mechaber said, It has to be that they don't know that they're forming a mechitza. Then the Mechaber said, even if one of them knows, it becomes aser. Then the Mechaber said, even if you don't tell them now that they're making a mechitza, but if it's karoiv hadavar sheyedu, if it's reasonable that they're going to chap what's going on over here, then you're not allowed to do it. And he gave a dugma, he gave a case. Let's say you already pulled the shtick once, you can't pull the shtick a second time. If you used these people as a mechitza once, you can't do it again. Says the Mishnah Berurah, how about if it's not Rava's Gabbai doing it a second time? How about if this Olam went to hear a share by Abaya, and now Abaya's Gabbai wants to pull a shtick? So it's the same people, but it's a different Gabbai. It's a different person who wants to use the mechitza. Says the Mishnah Berurah, have a suffix. That's a suffix. The Shema Yagishu Bazah, and he brings this down for the Magen Avram. Ubel Yor Rabba Mekel Bazah, but the El Rabba is Mekel. Ois Kat Mem Aleph, Mechitza Oid. You can't do it another time. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Fila b'Shabbos Acheres. Even on a different Shabbos, you can't do it again with these people. Damayakish Shekarv Sheyagishu have a like Kemaimin B'Tchila Ladas, because once they were used for this purpose once, even if it's 6 weeks later, they're going to chap, then it's called ladas, then you have a problem. V'loy dami l'sivav, and this is not the same as sivav. In sivav, the Mechaber is going to tell us that if it's like the case of Rava, where people were casually forming a mechitza, shaloi ladas, and then they found out, because now they see the Gabbai carrying, and they say, how could the Gabbai carry? Oh, I chap. The Gabbai is carrying because of Shin Samach Beis Sif Hey. He's carrying because we're making a mechitza. Is that now a problem? Now is the mechitza bottle because now they know? In Sivav, the Mechaber is going to say no. As long as they didn't know when they stood up to be a mechitza, they didn't know when they became a mechitza, they didn't know. If they chap later, it's okay. That's the halacha of Sivav. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says over here, I don't understand. So why is it that you can't pull the shtick a second time? Why is that different? In other words, we said if you pulled the shtick once with these people, you can't pull the shtick again a second time. Why? Because they're going to chap, right? But if you pull the shtick with them once and they chap while you're doing it, that's okay. Why is that different? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, the Hasam b'tchila because the first time there was no reason for you to suspect that they're going to chap. And therefore, look, this is a dinderab, this is a chashash d'Rabbanan. We're not going to be so machmer on it. Va'afilu b'pam harishon. This is an interesting halacha. This line took me a few minutes to figure out. Va'afilu b'pam harishon. Even when you're doing this the very first time with these people, and they don't know, so it's mutter. Va'afilu b'pam harishon. Im loy hoya loy anoshim k'dei tzarchai. Let's say you wanted to be able to be metaltal yoyse b'dal ramas in a big area, and you didn't have enough people to surround that area. You want to get from point A to point B. The distance between point A and point B is 30 amas. So now you have a rather large area that you need to encircle with people, right? Let's say you need to make a 30 amma square in order for you to get from point A to point B. You don't have enough people. So what do? So what you did was, you took the people that were available to you, and you had them surround you in a small area. And now you tell them, Rabbi Sai, walk. And you walk in the middle of them. So again, you want to get from point A to point B. It's 30 amas. You don't have enough people to encircle the whole area. So how are you going to get from point A to point B? Very simple. You'll get the people that you have, and you'll have them surround you right here by point A, and then you'll tell them, Rabbi Sa, walk. And you'll have them walk, and you'll walk in the middle of them until point B. So you're not telling them to make the mechitza, right? What you're doing is you're telling them walk, and I'll walk in the middle with you. Says the Mishnah Berurah, in that case, Aser. That's Aser, Shekar Vadavar Sheyargishu. Because over there it's reasonable that they're going to chop what's going on. The fact that you're telling them, walk, and I'll walk in the middle, And by the way, I'm carrying something, right? They're going to chap that they're a mechitza. The Mechaber said that the people are a mechitza even when they're walking, with the implication being that you could walk in the middle of them. Yeah, that's like the case of Rava. They're escorting Rava home. So they're just doing it, not because you told them to. Or it's just that there happens to be a very large group of people standing very close together, and you're walking in the middle of them, and nobody chaps at all what's going on. They don't even chap that you're walking in the middle of them. Okay, Ice Cut and Vav, which we said already, outside, in Bohm with Chilul Shalei Ladas, if the people came and became a Mechitza Shalei Ladas, even though later on they chap that they're being used as Mechitzas in Lachush, that's okay the first time. Sif Zayin. Yesh Mi Sha'omer. So now we're going to have a dissenting opinion here. Yesh Mi Sha'omer, there is a Rambam. The Berurah says that this is a Rambam. Yesh Mi Sha'omer, there is one that says, Shalayamid oisam adam shu roitze lehishtamish b'mechitzazu elayamid oisam acher shaloi l'daitoi. We said that you could use the people as a mechitza, but they cannot know that they're being used as a mechitza. The implication is that the person who wants to carry, he knows. And he could even, like a shtickle, like arrange them, as long as they're not going to chap that they're being used as a mechitza. As long as they don't know, he could know. The Rambam says no. The person who wants to be able to carry, he also, not that he doesn't have to, he could know, but he can't be the one to set them up. If there's any instructions that have to be given, he can't be the one who's going to give the instructions. So if Rava's Gabbai would want to carry the flasks, he would have to get the assistant Gabbai to go, Shmelka, tell them to like form a circle, but not him. He shouldn't tell them to form the circle. Says the Mishnah Berurah cut members. The same way the people that are standing can't know that they're being used as a mechitza. Also, you see, the Mishnah Berurah is saying a little different than I just said. The Mishnah Berurah is saying that the one who wants to carry, not that he could know, he just shouldn't give instructions. The Mishnah Berurah is saying, no, he shouldn't know. So the assistant Gabbai, Shmelka, should chap that the Gabbai needs to carry something. The assistant Gabbai should go and make instructions to form a ring. Then the Gabbai could realize, or the Gabbai could be told, you realize you're mukaf bechitzas, right? And then he could go carry. But not that, he could know. Just he should tell Shmelka, you bossed them around. No, he can't know. That's what it says over here in the Mishnah Berurah. I didn't pick up on this until now. That's the Siyata D'Shmai Rabbi saying a shir. Is that because it's for the Rabbim, the Rebbeinu Shalom made me realize now this distinction that I did not realize an hour ago. Okay, so again, the same way the people who are forming the mechitza cannot be aware, they can't know that they're forming the mechitza. The one who wants to benefit from it also cannot know that this mechitza is being formed for him. But once they're in position, now he can know. Mem Gimel, the Rashba disagrees with this. His opinion is, even the one who wants to carry could arrange the people to be a mechitza. It's only a kpeid on the people that are forming the mechitza, that we paskin like this Rashba likula. Okay, let's go a little bit weiter over here. Finally, says the Ramah, 3 lines off the bottom. Hago. Ve'ein lasois mechitza shel b'nei adam. The Ramah is machriya. We should not use a mechitza formed from people. Rak b'shas hatzorich u'b'shas hatchak. Only in a time of great pressing need. V'imshachach davar echad b'rishos harabim. So weit, says the Ramah. So weit, says the Ramah, that you should not rely on this. Is if somebody forgot something in the Rishos HaRabim and it's valuable and he can't leave it there and he needs to get it into the Rishos HaYachid, Yoiser Adif, it would be better lahoilich sham tinoikos, to bring a bunch of ketanim over there. Hey, kiddies, let's go play over there. Bring a bunch of kids over there so that they should play, and they'll see something on the floor, and they'll pick it up. You're not going to tell them to pick it up. You're going to tell the kids, hey, that's a good place to go play tag. The kids will run over there. They'll say, oh, look at that bracelet. Oh, look what I found. They'll pick it up, and they'll bring it home. Even though there's no mechitza, right? What they're doing is haitzah daraisa. But they're ketanim. Okay. It's better to do that than to go use this shtick of making mechitzas out of people. And that a gadol should transport Yosef B'Dal Amas in Rishos HaRabim based on the mechitza of people. Says the Mishnah Berurah, it's better, bring kids over there to play, tektanim, let them bring the chayfetz, let them pick the chayfetz up and bring it to Rishos HaYachid. Of course, the Mishnah Berurah is going to say there are some important caveats to this. First of all, it has to be, you can't bring Ruvain's kid over there, and Ruvain's kid is going to see his mommy's bracelet or his daddy's sitter and say, oh, that's daddy's, that's mommy's. And he's going to bring it up and carry and do it for the gadol. That would be usher. It has to be that the kid doesn't know who it belongs to. So that he's doing it for himself. He thinks he found a beautiful sitter. He thinks he found an expensive bracelet, and now he's picking it up and he's transporting it in Rishos HaRabim lahanos atzma. He's doing it for himself. He's not doing it for a gadol. If he's doing it for a gadol, it's a problem. But he's doing it for himself. He's a gadol. If he knows it's his father's, so then he's doing it for the gadol. And in that case, then everybody would be mechuyev to stop him. No, you're not allowed to do it. You're doing malacha for a gadol on Shabbos, you're not allowed to do it. Certainly you can't bring him to play over there with malice aforethought, knowing that he's going to pick it up and transport it for the gadol. It doesn't have to be that it's for his father or for his mother. It could be that it's for his next door neighbor. He cops that it belongs to his neighbor. Oh, let me go bring it to him. No, then he's doing it for a Yisrael or gadol. Not allowed to do that. Also, who's the one that's bringing the kid over there to play? Can't be the kid's father. Father has a chiv of chinuch on his child. He's not allowed to bring his child to go play tag where he knows the kid is going to pick something up and transport it. That's being over his chiv of chinuch. He's mechuyev to be mechanech him, the ligar by, and to object to him, ula frishai, and to stop him from doing an iser, kisherayehu mechal Shabbos. Afilu hanos atzmai. If a father sees his kid in the Rishos HaRabim picking up something valuable for himself, for the kid's picking it up for himself, the father's mechuyev to stop him. You're being mechal Shabbos. So, what are you doing? Even if it's in a Siddur Rabbanon. We learned this all. Certainly you can't bring him there. I've seen people make this mistake, Rabbi Isai. I've seen adults pick up their child who's a cotton and bring him over to the light to turn the light on and to turn the light off. Not allowed to do that, Rabbi Isai. You have a chiyuv chinuch on your child. Not allowed to do that. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Sivches. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discussing limud HaTorah should be hanging against Klal Yisrael. The Ron Shamshin said, Yeshua Sefuas Parnasa Shadukim Tolos Need. We should be zeichet to see the Biaskel Tzedek B'Meher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.